Ever wonder how a single page of stats can turn a handful of miniatures into a battlefield juggernaut? In Warhammer 40,000, that page is your unit's datasheet, and it holds everything. And in this episode of 40K 101, we're diving deep into datasheets to show you exactly why they're the key to unleashing your army's true potential. This is how to understand your datasheet in Warhammer 40,000. Welcome back to my 40K 101 series, where I'm going through all the basics of the game system. If you're a beginner, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep up with all of the videos as they come out. Every unit has a datasheet. This covers what the unit's basic stats are, what weapons it can use, what its special abilities are, and its composition of models. So let's go through a datasheet and see what each part means and how you can understand what you're looking at in the broader context of the game. We'll use a Space Marine intercessor as they represent a good average Warhammer 40,000 unit. Firstly, you'll see the unit's name and a row of numbers, which covers the basic stats of each of the models in the unit. Let's work through each of these one by one so you can understand how each works. M is for movement in inches. So my intercessor here has a 6-inch movement. Inches is what that double apostrophe means if you didn't know. So when it's my turn to do a movement, my intercessor here can move 6 inches in any direction. A movement of 6 is pretty standard for infantry, whilst anything shorter is generally considered slower. Between 10 and 12 inches is pretty standard for most vehicles, while some Eldari skimmers can go as fast as 14 inches. T is for the model's toughness, representing how resilient a model is. Why does toughness matter? Well, in order to find out if a model is eligible to take damage, the attacking player needs to see if their weapons are strong enough to wound the unit. This is done by comparing a weapon's strength against a model's toughness and rolling a d6. If the strength and toughness are equal, rolling a 4 or higher will be a success. If the strength is higher than the toughness, a 3 or higher will be a success. Whilst if the toughness is higher than the strength, well, in that case you'll need a 5 to wound it. If the strength, however, is double the toughness, it's go time, as you'll be rolling 2s and above. And finally, a 1 is always a fail, and a 6 is always a success. And additionally, a 6 is called a critical wound. You can typically extrapolate a good bit of information by understanding a unit's toughness. A Space Marine's toughness value of 4 is above the average of a normal infantry unit on the board. So it's pretty good. Regular humans, alongside all flavors of Eldar, most demons, Tau, and the members of the Tyrannid hordes typically have a toughness of 3, and the poor grots of the orcs have a measly toughness of 2, whilst the boys themselves are far tougher with a value of 5. They stand alongside more classically elite infantry like the Terminators of the Space Marines with a value of 5. Then the hyper-elite infantry of the Adeptus Custodes have a toughness of 6 as standard. Anything beyond this and you begin looking at lightly armoured vehicles and monsters, so most Eldari skimmers, Space Marine bikes, light tanks like Impulsors and Rhinos, all sit between here and toughness 10. 11 through 12 are your tanks and heavy vehicles, whilst anything at toughness 13 is a super heavy and requires dedicated anti-tank weaponry to deal with. Next up, we've got SV. This is its armor save on a d6. Classically, a Space Marine's armor save is a 3+, and elite units will save on a 2+. Lighter armor begins around a 4+, whilst the Imperium's finest flak jackets have a measly value of 5+. An armor save of a 6 is often referred to as a t-shirt save, and often feels like you're wearing a t-shirt in a battlefield. W is the number of wounds a model can have, but might be easier to think of as its health points. If, when attacking a unit, it has been successfully hit, and has made a successful wound roll and has failed its armor save roll, it will lose a number of wounds equal to the damage of the weapon it has been wounded by.
Whoa, slow down, egghead.
If the wounds are reduced to 0, it's removed from the board. If there are multiple models in the unit, it's up to the controlling player to pick which unit to get removed. Something actually really valuable, and we'll look at in our battle tactics video. Let's tackle LD and OC together, as they kind of work in conjunction. LD stands for leadership value, rolling 2d6 and checking if the unit can hold its nerve during devastating circumstances. And OC stands for objective control value. This one is a bit more abstract, but to be brief, if you're contesting an objective on the battlefield, so two opposing units are trying to control an objective, you'll need to calculate which side has the higher OC. If you fail a battle shock test, which typically occurs during the command phase of your turn if your unit is below half its starting strength, although some armies have ways to force this mechanic, this OC value is reduced to 0. Now that you've got the basics of unit stats, let's jump to the weapon profiles. Because a Space Marine is only as good as its gun, or chainsaw.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The weapon options are listed in 2 distinct groupings, one for the shooting weapons and one for the combat weapons. You'll typically see a list of all of the available options for your models, so all of the standard weapons plus any options or special weapons. You'll need to refer to the options to see the loadout. This is on the reverse side if you picked up a pack of data cards, or at the bottom of the entry if you're reading from the codex. Infantry models typically can only fire one weapon, whilst vehicles are able to fire all of the weapons they have equipped. In combat, all units can only typically attack with one equipped weapon. Regardless of shooting or melee, the way you read the profile is the same. And first up is the range of the weapon. And this is only really applicable for ranged weapons, as you need to be in combat to use a melee weapon. This is measured in inches again. So a typical bolt rifle has a range of 24 inches. Anything longer than this on infantry is generally pretty good, and shorter is kind of worse.
Yikes.
And when I say better or worse, we're being really subjective here, and it will change depending on your army. I'm just trying to give you a baseline. Most pistols tend to be around the 12-inch range, and dedicated anti-tank weaponry like a las cannon is normally around 48 inches, although can sometimes be as short as 36. Next up is the A or attacks value. This indicates the number of dice you get to roll per weapon of that type in a unit. So our Space Marine Bolter has an attacks value of 2, meaning every Space Marine in my 5-man intercessor unit here has 2 attacks, meaning I'll get 10 dice to shoot at this Tyrannid Termagant squad with. The 3+ next to the attack value represents its ballistic skill here, or weapon skill in melee, and indicates what value it needs to hit. A 3+ here is on the above average end. So my Space Marine unit is going to attack with all 10 of its bolter shots, and on average, about 7 of those shots will make their mark. Next up, we have the strength value of the weapon. As mentioned during the toughness section, this means we measure the strength against the toughness value of the target. So, knowing that most horde units of Tyranids have a standard toughness value of 3, we can see that our bolter here should be quite effective against this unit. The strength of this bolter is higher, meaning we'll need to roll a 3 or better once again. This time we get about 4 shots through, which is a bit below the average. The Tyrannid Termagants will now get the opportunity to make their armor save to see if they can hang on. They have chitin armor covering their hides with a value of 5+. However, they have to deal with the armor penetration value identified as AP on the datasheet. As you can see here, this is an AP value of -1, meaning any of the dice rolled by the player attempting the save will be reduced by 1. So despite rolling 2 5s, which would have saved the Tyranids, these have now been reduced to a 4, meaning that the Termagants will suffer 4 wounds, 1 from each of the failed save with a damage value of 1. As the Termagants only have a wound of 1, 4 of the bugs have been eliminated. You can see in the profile as well that there are little square brackets around some keywords alongside the weapons. These are called Universal Special Rules and apply useful bonuses to weapons. Take Heavy, for example. This rewards players for keeping a unit stationary and not moving them, and gives them a +1 to their dice roll when making a hit. So in this case, if the Space Marines had stayed stationary, the bolter would hit much more accurately on a 2+. The Assault keyword that the bolter has means that the unit can perform an advance in its movement phase and still be eligible to shoot. There are plenty of these special rules, and let me know if you would like a video detailing how to understand them and how to get the most out of them. The abilities section of the datasheet notes, firstly, any faction abilities. Here you'll see Oath of Moment is listed. This is the army rule mentioned in the previous video in the series. Below is the unit's special ability, and will typically give you a good idea of what that unit is ideally wanting to do. Here you can see that the objective secured ability means that you'll maintain control of any objective on the battlefield that this unit comes into contact with until a point that your opponent patrols that objective. So reading between the lines, this means that you can leave an objective if you need to do a supporting action elsewhere, and still claim any mission points that require objectives being held. A very handy ability. Finally, at the very bottom, you'll notice keywords. These are really useful for things like stratagems and aura abilities and who can lead what units and so on. So that's the overall picture of a datasheet. But how do we get the most out of a datasheet? And what sort of things should we be looking at when trying to differentiate units? Well, in the next video, we'll compare 2 almost identical units to see how tiny differences in the datasheet can massively change their roles on the battlefield. So make sure you're subscribed and have given the video a like. Now we've got a lovely growing community of new players from all over the world on the Plucky's Tabletop Parlour Discord server, which you can join for free in the link below. So let's take a look at what everyone's been up to this week in our community showcase.
First up in this week's community showcase is Biggest Gobbo with this beautiful Trogoth. Fantastic purpley skin, and I love the bug it's grasping. Gossikin has slammed into the showcase with his take on Rabute Gilliman in a beautiful purple armor for the Lord Commander of the Imperium. Love it. Drop Props has shown their work in progress marine here. It's a Beaky and Primaris armor of I think the White Scars chapter, but I haven't had a confirmation. Tagus has finished up their Chaos Wildebeest. Fantastic work, and I love the snowy base. It's such a terrifyingly beautiful model. Panorka has painted up these beautiful Sylvaneth. The blue accent on the Dryad Spirits is just glorious. And I don't know if this is technically allowed, but I've been working on some House Malanax Knight Atroposes for an upcoming Adeptus Titanicus tournament, so I just wanted to show those off. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.